us today. The first thing we're going to do is proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. Arthur, our Vice Chair, do you mind leading us in the pledge?
I do not. I pledge allegiance. I can't see the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate that. Jamie, if you could we call the roll to establish quorum, please?
Sure. Ms. Lyons? It's okay, I see her.
Yeah, she's there.
Mr. Marcus?
Present.
Mr. Carney?
Present.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa? Okay, I see him. Ms. Cesara? Mr. Chavon?
I'm here. Yes, thank you.
Chair Blank?
Present.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. To members of the board, I'm going to ask you remain muted unless and or until you have a need or desire to speak. I want to make sure that we try to keep the recording as clean as possible. So let's see. With that, let's go ahead and swear any members of the public that are going to be addressing the board this evening in. I don't know if we have any signed up. Shari, do we? Hi, good evening.
I'm not sure. Yvonne, do you know if we have anyone that's signed up to speak? But if not, I'll just do it anyway and then they can respond. Moderator, can you please unmute the attendees and anyone that's signed up to speak? Please raise your right hand. If you're going to present today or speak to the board, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Moderator, you're unmuted? Meaning the applicants and the...
They are now, they're being brought into the room.
Okay.
I believe Mr. Paris raised his hand, I'm guessing, as a member who is going to be addressing the board this evening. Mr. Paris, were you present for the swearing in?
I was, yes, that's what I was raising my hand for.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to hear a yes. So,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, that was James Paris and Sharon Wilkin, who both acknowledged the oath. Thank you so much. All right, so with that, let's deal with the approval of the minutes. I hope everybody on the board had a chance to review the October draft minutes. Are there any modifications or changes to those minutes that need to be presented by any members of the board?
Can you join in?
Okay, I'm there. It said it was on.
Right, you should be able to.
Members of the public, if you could please mute yourselves until you are called upon to speak. Great. Thank you. I'll ask again, any members of the board wishing to make any amendments to the minutes? Otherwise, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve. All board members are currently muted. Feel free to unmute yourself if you're going to move to.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Rosa. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Marcus. Thank you so much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 You, any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes for our October 5th, 2020 meeting are hereby approved. All right, so with that, let's go on to agenda item, the first agenda item on the docket for this evening. Case number PLN HPCOA 20090002. It is a certificate of appropriateness for new construction. I'm going to ask for disclosures before we have the staff report, and I'm just going to go in line on my screen, so this might change throughout the night. But let's start. Mr. Marcus, any disclosures?
No disclosures.
Thank you, Mr. Chavon.
No.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes, I walk by those vacant lots all the time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carney? Oh, you're muted, sir.
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Rosa?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I want staff's interpretation on my stance here. This had previously been brought forth. I believe it was 2 years ago now. I was not a member of the board at that time, but I had worked with the applicant and actually represented the applicant at that time for a different project, similar but different. So I'm not sure if I need to recuse myself here, but I wanted to make that disclosure clear. I want to put it on the record.
This is Shari. Are you getting any sort of financial benefit from this application that's before us tonight?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so there's no reason to.
Okay,
But
understood.
I do appreciate the disclosure though, Richard. Thank you. Mr. Parker, any disclosures? Dave, you're muted.
I was there on the property.
Okay, thank you. Are there any board members that I missed? Don't believe so. I think I got everybody. Okay, with that, staff report. Trish, if you would.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. This is Trisha Logan, Historic Preservation Planner. And this project is case number PLN HP COA-2009-0002. And it's for a property that's located at 424 Southwest 8th Terrace. And it's in the Sailboat Bend Historic District. It's for the construction of a new one-story single-family residence with a request for yard reduction. And so this property is located at a corner lot. It's at the corner of Southwest 8th Terrace and Southwest 4th Place. And it's an irregular lot. But the primary facade in this design faces Southwest 8th Terrace and the secondary facade faces Southwest 4th Place. This is the overall layout of the proposed single-family new construction. And the exterior wall materials that are proposed include stucco siding, a white textured stucco finish, and calypso coral stone at the base of the porch columns. And the overall height of the proposed new construction project is 22 feet, 10 inches, with an additional allowance for FEMA. The structure, since it sits on a corner lot, it does have two facades. On the screen in front of you, you can see the facade that faces Southwest 8th Terrace, and then this is the facade that faces Southwest 4th Place. And on the corner of the lot, there is a double garage. This is something that is atypical in the district. Most properties do have a single garage throughout the district, and particularly the older structures, or they do not have a garage. And this particular project does request a yard reduction. And so to give you an idea of this particular lot, we'll go back to the overview of where it's located in the Sailboat Bend Historic District. And you can see there's 5 properties on this block. The property that's highlighted is the one we're speaking about right now, and the one that's directly to the east, 811 Southwest 4th Place, is the second item on the agenda. And then the next property is 801 Southwest 4th Place. And all of those properties would be fronting along Southwest 4th Place. The way that this area is situated is most of the properties that are along Southwest 8th Terrace and Southwest 4th Place that front the river, which are on the opposite side of the street, have varying setbacks. So there's not a consistency there. And since there's 2 new construction projects, one adjacent to another along Southwest 4th Place, we're looking at 801 Southwest 4th Place for the existing conditions of what those setbacks are. And the approximate setback of that house to the east at 801 Southwest 4th Place is approximately 25 feet. And this property is requesting a 15-foot setback. So there'd be a difference between the setbacks. And then you'll find out in our next application at 811 Southwest 4th Place that they're also requesting a similar setback. So there's not a lot of consistency between the existing structure and the 2 proposed structures with the setback request. So there's, sorry, I'm getting used to my new environment here. So in the staff report, it goes through the different criteria that need to be looked at as part of this application. The first section would be the relationship between this work, which is the proposed new construction project, and then other properties within the historic district. Since it's a one-story property, it does fit within the character of the district. And a lot of the materials that are used are found within the material and design guidelines. So this application meets that criterion. And then the next section, looking at it for new construction, there's various things that were looked at as part of the application, including height and the width ratio between the new construction project and the surrounding historic district. And most of the items listed under here, the application does meet the criteria, but there are a few where they partially meet the criteria. So one item that's called out is the relationship of solids and voids in the front facade of the building, that they should be visually compatible with buildings and places that it's visually related to. And throughout the historic district, a majority of the residents have a single front door or a single front door with side lights. And in this case, on both facades that are proposed on Southwest 8th Terrace and 4th Place, it has a double front door that's proposed. And then the next one would be the relationship between the open space, which I already went over the setback request and the issues with that. And then with the relationship of the materials and texture and color of the facade, this is actually okay with the materials that are being proposed. And then the request for the size of the building, the mass of the building in relation to open spaces, the windows and door openings, et cetera, under letter I. The request for the two-car garage that is pushed forward on the lot and becomes a prominent feature. That is something that is inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhood. The utilization of the double French doors, and on the Southwest 4th Terrace, the elevation shows the double French doors plus an additional door that leads to the garage, kind of creating an off balance. So staff was recommending that an alternate location could be looked for that access point. And then most of the materials that are being proposed do meet the criteria. So in conclusion, for this application, in accordance with sections 47-2411 D3CI and 47-2411 D3C3 or III of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a COA for new construction under case number PLN HP-2009-0002 located at 424 Southwest 8th Terrace meets the criterion as outlined in section 47-2411 D3CI of the ULDR and has items that meet and do not meet the criteria as outlined in section 47-2411 D3CII of the ULDR and has items that meet and do not meet the criteria as outlined in sections 47-17 of the ULDR. Just to recap with the elements that are included in this application that do not meet the criteria, those include the yard reduction request for Southwest 4th Place, the placement and size of the garage in a prominent location, the double front entry doors on Southwest 8th Terrace and Southwest 4th Place, the placement of the door leading to the garage on the south elevation, and then something I forgot to mention was the use of PVC fencing, which is the only element that doesn't meet the material and design guidelines. That is not something that's listed in the design guidelines for the district, and it's also something that is discouraged of use in the design guidelines for the city of Fort Lauderdale. There are two conditions that are suggested if this application is to be approved, and those conditions are that all glass shall be clear with an option of low E, and that this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
Thank you, Trish. In light of that, and before we move forward, I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to address both of these agenda items as together. Shari, would there be any issue with that since they play off one another?
I just suggest doing it separately only because it's separate addresses and separate resolutions and
Okay, understood.
numbers.
Yep, no, that's fine. Thank you. Okay. So with that, is the applicant or anybody on behalf of the applicant present and wishing to address the board?
Yes, hello. This is Steve Brandt. I'm the architect for the project.
Hi, Mr. Brandt. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you and recognize that you've been sworn in previously. Do us a favor. You just announced your name on the record. If you could please provide an address for yourself, and then you will have 3 minutes to address the board.
Steve Brandt, S.H. Brandt Associates, 5010 North Federal Highway, Lighthouse Point. I don't seem to see my camera on, so that's probably good, not bad, but anyway. Anyway, this project, if some of you would remember, if you were on the board a couple of years ago, we presented two-story houses for the same properties. They're very similar in character, very similar in scale. The only difference was they were two-story as opposed to one. With the marketing conditions as they are and the price of construction, the owners have decided to change the program to reduce the size of the buildings to one story. So this project that is before you today is basically just the exact same house, just reduced in overall size to a one story. The vernacular of the buildings is very similar to the original approved application, and the layout, the footprint of the houses is, I would have to say, almost identical. I'm sure there's some minor differences, but the garage locations, the room locations, everything on the first floor, the size and the setbacks are basically identical to the original approved application. So what we're looking for here is just the approval of a one-story project as opposed to a two-story project. A few comments that the setback reductions, these setback reductions are similar to the originally approved project. We did ask for a setback reduction on the west property in the same location and the east property in the same location. This west property, the reduction is on the south side, and that's being used as a side yard, although it has a front yard setback, and we've not gone to the 15-foot setback, but the majority, or the more than half of the house is set back an additional 4 feet from the maximum allowed setback. So, and we also created a small entry feature there to enhance that elevation and make it look like it's actually it's possibly a second entrance, or maybe even a main entrance. And it just depends on your interpretation. Obviously, since that side is not as wide, it doesn't present so much as a main entrance. So we've, on the west side of the house, we've also created the main entrance that is much larger and presents much more to the street. The location of the garages is something that's come up in the comments this time, which we really weren't prepared for, didn't expect it. But you know, if you look at the site, I mean, it's almost impossible to put the garages anyplace else and have any usable backyard. The configuration of the site, you know, really dictates the rear yard being on the north end, and so obviously putting the garage there would make the plan of the house really difficult. With that, the only other comment, I didn't hear a comment on the plastic fence, and I'd like to address that with the board. The comment was that you don't allow plastic fences, and I guess I was just kind of curious why. I mean, if it's the color, you know, I mean, I think we all agree that plastic is more durable than wood, longer lasting, and retains its beauty or aesthetic for a much longer time. And so if the color is the issue, I'm sure we could find a brown plastic fence. If plastic is the issue, then I was just curious why.
Yeah, the PVC, I believe, is the issue, and we'll certainly get into that a little bit further. But Mr. Brandt, thank you so much for your presentation. We do appreciate it. And stand by, because we're definitely going to have, I'm sure the board will have some questions for you. But before we get to that, I want to see if there are any other members of the public that wish to address the board on this item.
Mr. Chairman, this is Yvonne Redding. We do have several members of the public signed up for this item. First, I have Sharon Wilkins, and she has been moved over to a panelist.
Great. And I believe Ms. Wilkin was one of the two members of the public who affirmatively acknowledged being sworn in earlier. So thank you for joining us, Ms. Wilkin. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sharon Wilkin. I live at 301 Southwest 14th Way, also known as Kenilworth Place. I have resided in Sailboat Bend since 1985, and I'm here today to support the construction of both homes. I'm speaking for both that are coming before you right now instead of one at a time. I would like to bring to the board's attention that our neighborhood has seen only 3 new single-family homes built since 2006. I firmly believe this is a direct result of the chokehold the historic designation has on our neighborhood. To be specific, the difficulty property owners encounter when trying to build a new home or remodel their existing properties is unheard of elsewhere in the city. In reading the comments that have been submitted to the Historic Board with respect to the new Architectural Resource Survey, it was noted by a prominent architect that he refuses to work in our neighborhood and tells his clients to stay away. I find those comments to be disturbing and very discouraging. The renderings of the 2 proposed homes look great and will be a wonderful addition to our neighborhood. I respectfully request that you allow these projects to move forward as they are designed. Please allow our neighborhood to see the same improvements all other neighborhoods in the city of Fort Lauderdale enjoy. I would also like to just add, if you're going to be opening up public comments after Tricia Logan gives her presentation, I would also like to comment there. I didn't know if I could sign up to comment on all 3, so I just did this one. But I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wilkin. We appreciate your appearance. All right. Are there any other members of the public present, Yvonne, that we're aware of?
We also have a Michael Rares signed up to speak, and he's been moved over.
Okay, Mr. Rares, we weren't able to receive your affirmative acknowledgement being sworn in, so I'd ask you to be sworn in at this time.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Is there a Mr. Rares or Ms. Rares possibly?
Sure.
Okay, there you go. Yes.
You gotta unmute.
Right.
There you go.
He's with me.
So my name is Paris,
Oh, Mr.
P-A-R-A-S.
Paris, I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. Mr. Paris, you actually were sworn in, I believe, earlier.
You were? Okay.
I was, yes.
Okay, I apologize for that. Mr. Rares, you have 3 minutes.
No problem. I was actually speaking for both of these houses as I've reviewed the backup information and the consultant's report already for both of them. So I'd like to let you know my name is Jim Paris. I live at 1216 County Court. My partner and I also own a home that we're now remodeling at 709 Bryan Place, which is just up the street from these 2 lots. I was here when this applicant came before you previously to build the 2-story houses. And many people I know in the neighborhood were very encouraged to see those homes built. As Mrs. Wilkin told you that only 3 new homes, single-family homes, have been built in our neighborhood in the last 16 years. The majority of properties in our neighborhood are rentals, including a large presence of low-income and affordable housing. As you know, this is not a traditional historic district where the majority of properties share something in common. It's an area with a wide variety of structures from many different eras. And as you see in the new Architectural Resource Survey, most of the properties have no significance and many are in need of redevelopment. A large number have been built in recent decades with simple, low-cost construction. Many buildings are just rectangular boxes with 3 or 4 small rental units in a row, many without forced air cooling systems or even basic safety features such as hurricane windows and doors. A lot of them were built below the floodplain elevation in an area that's quickly becoming more prone to flooding. I see the introduction of more single-family homes as a path to have families move into them rather than more rental units with transient residents. The garage, they're not so uncommon on our street, and the setbacks as far as that goes, I think they match most of the neighborhood. On Bryan Place, the houses on the water have really large lots, so their setbacks are really large, but in most of the neighborhood, the setbacks are very short. I feel you have a difficult job trying to apply features and products with the design guideline to new construction. I hope you'll see the need for more compromise in development of houses such as these and all new construction in the future. I feel these two homes are a very conservative use for this land, given the money this applicant has already invested. And I hope you'll consider what is best for our neighborhood and give them the approval for both of these house plans, just as they've submitted them. Thank you
so much, sir. We appreciate your appearance tonight. Any other members of the public to address the board on this item?
Mr. Chairman, sorry, that was my bad, but I was trying to call up Michelle Rares.
Oh, okay. Ms. Rares, if you are present, go ahead and you can unmute yourself or also open
This
up
is
your camera.
Michelle is actually part of the applicant team. She's
Yes.
one of the owners of the property.
Okay.
She's part of our team, and I don't see her on the on the listing, so I don't know if she is available.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, we have Stephanie Wedgworth.
Ms. Wedgworth?
Yes, hello.
Hi, could you, were you sworn in earlier?
I was not.
Great. Shari, would you mind swearing Ms. Wedgworth in?
Sure. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wedgworth. All right, Ms. Wedgworth, you have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself with your name and your address.
Okay, my name's Stephanie Wedgworth, and I live at 915 Southwest 2nd Court. Also goes by the name of Middle Street in Fort Lauderdale, downtown. And I've been a resident of Sailboat Bend since 2016. And I am also speaking in reference to both properties. I support the construction of both of these new homes as it brings value to our Sailboat Bend neighborhood, and the homeowners who live here definitely need more single-family homes that are beautiful to raise our property values, because we have a lot of challenges in our so-called historic neighborhood. So since I've lived here, I've seen very few new projects. I've seen a couple new townhomes that are not historic, but they are new. And but I haven't seen any new single family homes at all. And so just as Sharon and both Jim stated, you know, they said that there's only been 3 since 2006. And I think that's unfortunate, but I understand it because my boyfriend who owns this home with me is in real estate. And he has told me that he has tried to bring developers into this area, and a very prominent architect and planner who's been in this business for over 30 years said that he refuses to work in Sailboat Bend because there's too much red tape, too many loopholes, too many rules, too many restrictions. And he tells all of his clients to stay away from this area. So that's very unfortunate and concerning, being a homeowner in this area. So I am in huge support of these beautiful new homes. And I think that whatever they need and whatever the updates that they've decided to do, whether it's a plastic fence or putting a garage in a place, in a spot that makes sense for the homeowner, needs to be approved for the betterment of this community. So I support 100% the new homes, and I respectfully request that you guys allow this project to move forward exactly as they have planned and designed, so we can allow our neighborhood to see the growth and improvement that other neighborhoods get to see. And I also was not aware or clear on how to speak about the historic board update. So when Trish Logan does her thing, if it's possible to speak again regarding that, I would love to, but that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wedgworth. We appreciate your appearance. Yvonne, do we have any other members of the public who are wishing to speak on this item?
I had Don Wilkin signed up, but I do not see him on the list. But I also do have on the attendee list Mustafa Helling, which they were not signed up earlier. I don't know if they attend to speak or not.
If Mustafa Helling wishes to be heard, I'd ask them to raise their hand in the.
He's part of our group also. He didn't intend
Okay.
to speak.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Brandt. All right, so with that, seeing no other members of the public present to address this item, we will bring it back to the board for any questions of the applicant or staff.
If you're asking for, are you asking for my comment again? I'm sorry.
No, sir. No, sir. I'm asking our members of our board if they have any questions or
Oh.
comments of you or the staff.
Okay.
And hearing none. All right. So then with that,
I have some questions. I'm sorry.
sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead, Arthur.
Forgot to undo myself. I certainly agree with the neighborhood that all of this new development is welcomed heartily and will certainly help to develop these empty lots that I'm sure have been somewhat of an eyesore for a long time in the neighborhood. But be that this is the Historic Preservation Board, I do have some comments on the comments that our staff has put together. I do agree about the proportion of solids and voids in the front. I think the addition of even one more window would make the house friendlier looking on the front. I agree also about the garage, but I wouldn't make that a deal killer, so to speak. I understand the tightness of the lot being an architect, but at the same time, I wish there were some way, either through screen walls or brise soleils or something, as they used to do, to hide the garage from the street. But I realize we run into another problem, because I think we've talked about this in the past, that fences can only be 3 feet high. So that would sort of defeat that purpose there. A few other quick things. I think the setbacks, I understand why they need the setbacks for the mass of the house, but the setbacks should correspond a bit better to what is existing in the neighboring properties. I mean, maybe it means that some rooms get a little smaller, but I think there is some responsibility for a new house going into the neighborhood to at least respect what's there. And 2 more things, and these are little things. The door at the garage, I think, could be easily relocated to make that elevation much better, because right now with that door there, it makes it look like a rear elevation. And this house is unique because it does have actually 2 front elevations. My biggest concern, I think, is the thing that's probably easiest to address. I have a real concern about the fact that both houses look alike. It shouldn't be, I mean, certainly in Sailboat Bend, it shouldn't be a development home. But I've seen this in other neighborhoods, other historic neighborhoods, where somebody may come in unintentionally with the best of intentions, redoing 2 houses, making them look alike, but that sets a precedent for somebody else to come in and do 5 houses that look alike. So I do think through at least paint color or minimal detail changes, there could be a little bit more of a differential between these houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Any other members of the board wish to be heard on this item or have any questions for the applicant or staff?
I got a comment.
Please.
Just hearing everybody's input and with great respect to Arthur and David's not here tonight, David Parker?
Dave is here. He is.
But you know, those guys been around with all this for
I'm here. Okay.
they've been part of all this for such a long time that their comments are I put so much weight on, and I'm really encouraged that Arthur explained that he could see the need for consideration to allow these things to go forward with some consideration to tweaking, but it's certainly acceptable. It's certainly necessary, And if I lived there and I was one of those folks, I'd probably be standing there with them, encouraging this to happen, just for the benefit of the neighborhood. And when I first came on this thing, the one line that a lot of arguments I used to get in was always thrown to me was, "This is for the good of the people. This is for the good of the people." And this is for the good of the people. So these two projects seem to be a good addition to the neighborhood. Maybe not the most perfect match, but certainly better than what's there. And I think all things considered, it's moving in the right direction. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavone. Any other members of the board have any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, this is Dave Parker.
Hi, Mr. Parker.
I agree with Arthur. I like the setbacks to be a little bit more because of the houses across the street. I know they're setbacks because they're near the water, but as you go down there, you go to 801, the one on the other corner there, the setback, I believe, is closer to 25, and that's in that same block. So I think that's something that should be considered.
Thank you. Any other members of the board with any questions or any comments?
I have one question, and
Yeah.
I should have pulled this on my own, but it's more for staff. Did we confirm that the setbacks that are being provided are the exact? They are the same setbacks that were approved back in July 2017, correct? And that's more for Trish. I think.
I believe they are.
Right. So my only thought would be if they were approved then and the scale of the home has then been reduced, it would seem, in my opinion, pretty logical to then allow for them now. I don't think they should be penalized for scaling the home down, which sizing and massing wise would probably fit more in conformance with the lot and block, to then now say, well, let's retract on that. It doesn't make much sense in my opinion. And it's a unique street, but in my view, aesthetically, it works. And I think it works well. And I applaud the new construction. To the constituency's point, there hasn't been a lot of new construction. So I think there should be some latitude where there can be. And especially in this case where you literally have a record in which this was already approved. So that's my position on it.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Appreciate the comments. Anybody else with any comments from the board? Any other comments, questions? Otherwise,
Is there any way we could talk them out of the plastic fence?
I'm sorry, Ms. Lyons, I couldn't understand what you.
I said, is there any way we could talk them out of the plastic fence and make it a wood fence?
Well, let me ask. Actually, yeah, I had a question about that I was going to bring up. Trish, let me ask you if or would the board, or maybe this is for Shari, would the board, were the board to approve this, and there's not a motion pending, but just listening to the comments, my guess is we're heading in that direction. If that were a sticking point, would we be able to approve it with a modified condition that the fencing be made from a otherwise acceptable material, or would that be something that would require a modification prior to approval?
With the fence, you can actually have that as a condition, but the other items, no.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, Ms. Lyons, to that point, that obviously that to me seems to be a glaring difference in clear violation of the code. I, like the other members of the board, support the project. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. The community seems to support it. Generally the project meets criteria, but I think that some of these small things that would be able to still keep in line with the historic nature of the area, such as an appropriate fencing in line with the code, I think could assist with having it blend more into the neighborhood. So, my desire would be to have the resolution, if it were to be moved for approval, to include a condition that the fencing be of such a material as otherwise approved by the code and as, supported by staff or approved by staff further. So, I mean, that would be my thought. Ms. Lyons, I'm guessing that you and I are kind of in line with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and Mr. Brandt, maybe you can just fill me in here. I mean, that is the type of thing that I think this board would probably agree with. I'm going to guess, and I'm not speaking for my fellow board members, but usually these are the types of things that we agree on, is that we like a project, but there are some of these finer points that we want to make sure are done to keep the historic aesthetic and historic nature of the community, especially in Sailboat Bend. Would that be something that you think would be easily acceptable to you and your client, would be to modify the fencing?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with modifying the fencing. My question still stands, is the material or the color.
Yeah, it's going to be a material issue. It's the PVC matter. And then the code specifies certain materials that are able to be used, and staff would be able to work with you to better.
Right. The issue is the wood, any kind of wood you put, even if you stain it, ends up turning gray and needs maintenance, and the board's cup and.
Well, and I certainly am. I certainly understand and am sympathetic to that cause. However, this is a historic district, and there are guidelines that need to be followed. And this is one of those things where, we don't want to burn the house down because we don't like the color, right? We'd rather.
Well, then we'll make it a wood fence.
So, all right. So then with that, I think unless there are any other comments from the board, I think we're all generally understanding of the direction I think that we're all feeling. I would entertain, actually, I'm going to ask Ms. Wallen, Shari, do you mind reading the resolution?
Sure. Do you want me to read the resolution to approve?
Let's read the resolution to approve now. And then if we need to, we can read the resolution to reject.
Okay, just 1 second here. I had the resolution to deny up, so I'm just trying to get the one to approve of. Okay. A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction for the property located at 424 Southwest 8th Terrace, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to construct a one-story single-family residence, and approving a yard reduction, case number PLN HPCOA 2009-0002.
Thank you. And just one other thing I would point out to the board before entertaining a motion, one of the things that I find quite persuasive is the point that Mr. Rosa brought up as well, that this board previously had approved this setback. And I found that to be very persuasive for me personally. And I think that there is something to be said, and we often discuss the need for this board to have consistency and follow our precedential findings and rulings. So I would, that was strongly persuasive to me. With that, I'd entertain a motion from any member of the board on this item.
How do we affix the issue of the fence?
So in making the motion, you would have to specify the findings of fact, and we could specifically address that hypothetically, I'd propose that the fencing would need to be, the material of the fencing would need to be modified to otherwise comply with the code as agreed upon by staff.
There are also two other conditions on page 8 of the staff report, if you'd like to include them. One of them is all glass shall be clear with an option of low E. And the second one is this application is subject to the approval of building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements. Whoever's making the motion, just let us know if you wish to include those conditions.
So I do need, we do need someone to move at this time if we wish to move this item forward. Don't be shy.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Mr. Rosa moves to approve. Is there a second?
Do you wish to include all of the conditions on page 8 of the staff report?
I have one question about the low E condition. Otherwise, they're fine. But who is holding the option? Is that the builder that at that point, when making an order for the windows and doors, has the option to include it? I'm just not clear on that part, because it's quite a cost prohibitive item to assume that they would go ahead and do that. That's not I'm just curious. I've never seen that in the guidelines. So, and I've seen it on almost every application that's come forth. So I just want to understand where the thinking and the logic on that is presenting each and every application.
Trish?
Sure. So a lot of times it's a request that's after something that's been approved, especially for new construction projects. So it's something that I typically include and especially in a new construction project for the suggested conditions, just so they have that option if they want it and they need it to meet any requirements of the building department.
Understood. But it's an option that's left to, in this case, the applicant.
Correct. Yeah. So if they bring in, their window and door schedule and all of their NOAs and say this is the type of glass that they're going to use, then it's something I can approve at staff level.
Understood. So I would make my motion to approve with the conditions set forth as items 1 and 2. 1 being the clear with the optional OE and application subject to the approval of building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
So, Ms. Rosa,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's all right, Mr. Rosa. I just want to clarify also, would that include the modification that the board was discussing surrounding the fencing material to be used?
It would, and for sake of efficiency, because I think I know where everyone lands on it, but not to dive into the contention with it, but the one section of the fencing that's bothered me is you could do a vinyl coated wood chain link fence, but yet somehow this type of fence, and I see why it's enumerated, so we're clear on that. But yeah, I'll throw that in there, that the condition that it be approved as to what a fencing material will be shown as in the guidelines. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Is there a second, and recognizing the issue with the code as well? I certainly acknowledge that.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Parker. With that, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Mr. Marcus, was that a nay vote?
Yes, I'm sorry, that was a nay vote.
Okay, Mr. Marcus votes nay. I want to make sure everybody else had the opportunity to be heard. Okay, with that, the motion carries, and that will be as to the 002 application. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, certificate of appropriateness for new construction, the sister project, we'll call it, case number PLN HP COA 2009-0003, construction of a new one-story single-family residence with a request for yard reduction. Let's see, any disclosures on this item? I'm assuming they're the same, but let's run through. Mr. Marcus?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Chavone?
No.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes, I walk by that lot all the time.
Thank you. Mr. Rosa?
Same as before. Yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Yes.
I believe, and yes, can you specify what the disclosure would be? You visited the site, sir, if I remember correctly, Mr. Parker?
I did see, I was at the site.
Okay, thank you. I think that's everybody on the board. With that, let's go ahead and hear the staff report. Trish?
Yes, good evening. Tricia Logan again, Historic Preservation Planner with the City of Fort Lauderdale. This is for case number PLN HP COA 2009-0003 for the property located at 811 Southwest 4th Place. This is again for the construction of a one-story single-family residence with a request for yard reduction. The property is located on the lot just east of the one we just discussed. It's a more regular lot with dimensions that are 103 feet deep and 83 feet wide. The proposed house is an L-shaped plan and has similar materials as the other house with formed stucco siding, a white textured stucco finish at the porch, and the windowsills, and then the Calypso coral stone at the base of the facade and at the base of the porch columns. And then the house is topped with a standing seam metal roof. The overall height of the proposed structure is 22 feet, which is a little bit lower than the house next door. So I won't go through all of the details like I did on the first application because they are very, very similar as far as what the concerns are from staff. I think one of those is including the setback. In this case, the setback of the front wall of the garage is 17 feet to reduce it from the 25 feet that's required. And Again, there is the concern with the placement of the garage in a prominent location, the double wide front entry doors, and then the use of the PVC fencing, which is mentioned in the application, but it wasn't specifically shown on the plans, but it appears that it would just be in the rear yard. If the application's approved with the PVC fencing, then they would have to come back and show the locations of that. If it's approved with an accepted material within the material and design guidelines, that's something that staff could approve at staff level, as long as it's enclosing the rear yard and not located in the front. So with that, I'll just read the summary conclusion. In accordance with sections 47-2411 D3CI and 47-2411 D3CIII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a COA for new construction under case number PLN HP 2009-0003 located at 811 Southwest 4th Place meets the criterion as outlined in section 47-2411 D3CI of the ULDR and has items that meet and do not meet the criteria as outlined in section 47-2411 D3CIII of the ULDR and has items that meet and do not meet the criteria as outlined in section 47-17 of the ULDR. There are two conditions that are the same as the previous application for consideration of this application's approved, which include all glass shall be clear with an option of low E, and this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
Thank you, Trish. Mr. Brandt, am I to assume that you'd also be speaking as the applicant on this item too?
Yes, that would be correct.
Feel free. You have 3 minutes, sir. Please identify
Okay.
yourself. Do me a favor, just for the record, Mr. Brandt, I apologize. Just please state your name, your business, and your address once again, if you would.
Steve Brandt, architect, SH Brandt and Associates, 5010 North Federal Highway, Lighthouse Point.
Thank you, sir.
Start your video. Asked you to start your video. Anyway, this is a very similar project again to the two-story that was proposed before. The siding is almost identical. The massing has obviously been reduced from a two-story to a one-story. This building, we had the opportunity to turn the garages away from the street as preferred by the historic code requirements. So we were able to do it in this case. I don't know where else you would put the garage except in the front of the house. If you want to have the doors aimed to the side, I guess if you had a driveway down the side, maybe you could, but regardless, I think it's in a better than facing the doors to the street. It gives a better presentation to the street. So the rest of the house is pretty much the same aesthetic as it was before, other than, if you all remember, our pineapple pickets in the railings, we've eliminated this time. We don't have any railing in this project. So with that, we're fine with the wood fence. We neglected to show the fence location on the plan, so it will be required by code around the pool area. So it'll probably be pretty typical placed where it would start at the corners of the house in the front and wrap around the backyard. There will not be a fence in the front yard on this project. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Brandt. Stand by. We'll be coming back to you, I'm sure. All right. From now, at this point, we'll hear from any members of the public that wish to speak in this item. One thing I would ask, and this is by no means a requirement or directive, but more just a request. If you had spoken on the previous item and have no further comments, no new comments as to this item, but hold the same the same positions, I would ask you just to consider that in determining whether or not to be heard. And if you still believe there's a desire to be heard, you can feel free just to let us know that you echo the same comments from the previous item, and we would certainly take those into equal consideration in the efforts of efficiency here. So with that, any members of the public that we have, Ms. Redding, to speak on this item that are signed up?
In addition to the public that spoke earlier, I have two new members, Ken Powell and Ruth Clark, now signed up.
Okay.
Attendees.
And I also see that Ms. Wilkin raised her hand. I believe she wishes to be heard too. Let's go to Ms. Wilkin first, as she was already sworn in. Ms. Wilkin, you will be recognized, and you have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Hi, my name is Sharon Wilkin, 301 Southwest 14th Way, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I would just like to add that I am a walker. I walk every single street, every single morning. I know this particular area of the neighborhood very well. And at least 3, possibly 4 of the homes that are directly adjacent to this particular parcel of land have 2-car garages, and I believe one has a 3-car garage. What I like about this design very much is it's not a back-out garage. It's a pull into the side garage. So when the doors are open, you won't necessarily be looking directly in it. So I just wanted to add, I think the garage is laid out perfectly. I am in support of it. I am in support of the project. I welcome it. I look forward to it. And thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wilkin. We appreciate your comments. Oops, I'm sorry. And for the new attendees, I'm sorry, Ms. Redding, can you tell us who's next on the list, please? Yvonne?
Oh, just one moment. They
No
were
problem.
already moved over, so
Okay.
it's Ruth Clark and
Ms. Clark and Mr. Powell, if I remember correctly, right? Mr. Ken Powell. If you could both please turn your cameras on, unmute yourselves to be sworn in.
This is Ken Powell. I do not have any comments.
Oh, okay. Thank
I'm
you,
here
sir.
just to observe. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then in that case, Ms. Clark, are you wishing to comment on this item?
No, I'm not. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us, to both of you. In that case, thanks, Shari. You're good. All right. So if there are no further members of the public who wish to comment, we will bring it back to the board. Any comments, discussions, questions for the applicant or staff on this item?
Chair, are we calling on the other members of the public that signed up to speak?
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't know if there were any other that wish to be heard. I apologize. If there were, I apologize, and let's certainly give them the opportunity.
Oh, are we asking them to raise their hands if they want to speak again, if they already spoke on the first item?
If you have a list of people, we can call on them and see if they wish to further comment. Maybe that's the safest way to go about it. We want to make sure we're not stepping on anybody.
Yeah, just to double check. Let's just make sure.
So let's go down. I see Mr. Paris turned his video on. Mr. Paris, do you have any additional comment, or should we rely on your previous comments on these items?
You know, most of my comments were in reference to both of these houses. I mean, I had elaborated on the garages as Mrs. Wilkin did as well. At this area in this street, almost every house has a 2 or 3 car garage. The 3-car garage was built recently and approved by the HPB. So that's all you see on that property. So I don't see this garage as being any kind of problem at all. That's all I have to say. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Paris. Can you do me a favor and just state your name and your address on the record so we have it as well?
My name is James Paris. I reside at 1216 County Court.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any other members of the public? Trish, do we want to run down the list, or Yvonne, just to make sure that we're not missing anyone?
Chair, we also had Stephanie Wedgworth.
Ms. Wedgeworth, would you wish to be heard again on this item?
This is Stephanie Wedgeworth, 915 Southwest 2nd Court, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I echo everything that I said previously on both properties. The only thing I just wanted to add is as though I do realize that we're bound to the historic designation or the historic board's approval for the fence. I don't know what all the rules are and what the requirements are for a fence, but I do think that it's slightly ridiculous to ask anybody to put in a wood fence in Florida where it rots. Mine's rotting, and that's just what wood does in this very tropical environment. So I don't know what the other options are besides wood, but if there's any other options, I hope that will be considered. So somebody who is building a new development in this area isn't stuck having to do wood just because it looks nice in a historic district that's not really a historic district. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wedgeworth. We appreciate the comments. Any other members of the public? Do we want to run down the list still?
I believe the rest of the members signed up to speak were with the team.
Okay, great, wonderful. So with that, then we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Comments or questions of the applicant or staff, or comments from the board.
Mr. Chair, it's Arthur Marcus. One comment in response to the lady who just spoke. There is such a thing as artificial wood. Trex, T-R-E-X wood is one of the brands, and that's a pretty good substitute. I would hope it would be acceptable, Tricia, to the historic standards, since it looks and acts like wood, but much better. It doesn't have the same problems in the soil and the moisture. Just an idea. I just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Any other members of the board wish to be heard on this item? All right, hearing no further comment, unless Mr. Carney, unless you're trying to unmute yourself, sorry. No, okay. With that, I guess at this time, Shari, would you do us a favor and please read the resolution to approve the item? If you
A resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for the property located at 811 Southwest 4th Place, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to construct a one-story single-family residence, and approving a yard reduction, case number PLN HP COA 2009-0003.
Thank you so much. One thing I would just note before calling for a motion on this item is, if a motion to approve were to be had, that I would suggest that I would be inclined to modify the conditions in the staff report again to mimic the prior item, to include that the fencing be of such a material as otherwise contemplated in the code and with the approval of staff, to make sure we have consistency there, as well as to include the other two recommended conditions. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve from a member of the board. Y'all are so shy tonight.
I'll go for round two here. I would make a motion to approve.
We got moved by Mr. Rosa, and that would be including the conditions previously discussed. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Seconded by Ms. Lyons. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes unanimously. All
And
right.
just to be clear, Mr. Chair, I forgot to ask this earlier for the other item. The approval is based on, do you adopt the statements of fact in the staff report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That was my understanding. Mr. Rosa, as the move-in on both motions, was that your intent?
Yes, it was.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to any communication to the city commission. I'm not sure that we have any. I don't believe that we had any pending. Any member of the board believe that there's any communication which we need to make to the city commission? Okay.
This is Dave Parker. Can I comment?
Please.
I know, and we've had, and previously, we've had new construction next to older construction, and we do have flooding. I think one of the things we need to be very careful, this is two structures on a whole in this area, that make sure that the level sufficiently for the house at 801, so we don't have runoff like we've had. We talked about that in previously discussions. We got to be very careful.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Your comments are noted. All right, so moving on, with no communication to the city commission, we will move on to section 6 of the agenda for the good of the city, and just a small discussion item that nobody seems to be interested in really at all, and that would be the proposed Sailboat Bend Historic District updates. So Trish, you wanna take it away and start that conversation off?
Sure. So again, Tricia Logan, Historic Preservation Planner with the City of Fort Lauderdale, and just bringing up the presentation. Following our discussion at the last board meeting, the board requested and made a motion to request an overview of the draft architectural resource survey report. Following last meeting, I did send out the link to the website that contains the report, the proposed ordinance updates, and several other items of information for the board to take a look at. Attached to the agenda, there was a brief memo summarizing the effort, as well as attachments for all of the exhibits related to this effort with, again, the report, the ordinance updates, and as well as comments from the public that we've received so far. So tonight I'll give you a brief overview of the survey report. And this survey was conducted as part of an overall effort to make updates to the Historic Preservation Program, which was directed by the City Commission a few years ago. It's typical to update or reassess historic districts periodically, usually every 10 years or so, to maintain an inventory of designated historic resources, which is a requirement through the designation of the City of Fort Lauderdale as a certified local government. So just to provide you a brief background of how the district was formed, this is a timeline of things that have occurred over time. As you can see, the efforts to start the district and create the district began in 1985 with the completion of an architectural and historical survey of the original town of Fort Lauderdale, which credits the persistence and hard work of the residents and organization of the community and the ability to conduct that survey at that time. This survey recommended an area located in the southeast corner of what is now the current district for historic designation. This recommendation was limited at the time to the boundaries of the original town, whose western boundaries were along Southwest 11th Avenue. And in response to the survey, a historic committee of the Sailboat Bend Civic Association was formed in 1986. And in 1988, the City Commission approved the original district, which I'm showing on the slide now. And that was an advertisement in the newspaper at the time. Between 1989 and through 1991, a study of the Sailboat Bend district or neighborhood was conducted through a neighborhood master plan program by planning consultants Duane Plater Zyberg, otherwise known as DPZ, who were hired by the Sailboat Bend Civic Association. This study covered a larger area using what is now the boundary of the current historic district, as shown in this map. A summary report of the study was prepared in 1991 by the Historic District Committee and Land Use and Zoning Subcommittee of the Sailboat Bend Civic Association, entitled The Sailboat Bend Historic District Study. The Sailboat Bend Historic District and its now current boundaries were approved by the City Commission in 1992. So the following objectives were set forth to implement the findings of this resurvey. The first was actually to adjust the boundaries of the existing historic district to exclude properties that fronted Broward Boulevard and a portion of the planned unit development zoning district, the PUD, in addition to what is now on the table, which is assign a contributing and non-contributing status to all structures within the Sailboat Bend Historic District and amend section 4717 of the Sailboat Bend Historic Ordinance, which is in the ULDR. The proposal for the modifications of the existing boundary lines of the Sailboat Bend Historic District was heard by the Historic Preservation Board in January for your recommendation to the City Commission. And the board at that time recommended denial of the proposed modification to the boundary and sent a communication to the City Commission. And from that communication, the City Commission gave direction to staff to not move forward with the modification of the boundary to the district. And the item didn't move any further forward. And now we have the proposal for the assignment of contributing and non-contributing status to all structures within the district boundary, as well as proposed amendments that are now being presented to you. So to give you a little bit of a background of the survey methodology, evaluations of significance for each property were conducted using data that was gathered in the field of the existing conditions throughout the neighborhood, and data such as folio numbers, parcel IDs, and dates of construction that are in the city's GIS system. Original permits when they're available and past permits were also looked at when feasible. The evaluation of each structure was based on the overall analysis that combines the date of construction, which were primarily retrieved through the Broward County property appraiser, but in some instances, further research was conducted. The property type, which is primarily residential in the items that are selected as, or the properties that were identified as contributing, are primarily residential, but in some select circumstances, civic and commercial properties were also identified if they service the neighborhood during the period of significance. The ability of the resource to convey the overall historic context of the setting was also taken into account. And that's something I'll get into a little bit more in a couple of slides, as well as the overall physical integrity of the structure. And in the sense, integrity is used in the context of historic preservation to refer to the physical character of a property. If the original characteristics of a building that have been compromised by additions or alterations to the degree that the original design of the building no longer is present, the building would be found to have lost its integrity. And within the guidance that we have at the national level, there are 7 aspects of integrity that are looked at, which include location, design, setting, material, workmanship, feeling, and association. Within the report, you'll also find definitions for things that we're talking about, including contributing property, non-contributing property, and period of significance. Contributing property and non-contributing property are both things that are defined in our code now, but a contributing property adds to the historical architectural qualities and relates to the historic context of a district, and then the non-contributing property doesn't have those qualities. And then overall, there's a period of significance that's defined, which is the overall length of time that properties that are contributing fall into and exhibit those physical characteristics and relate to overall historic context and significant historical activities that occurred within the area. So moving on to historic context, this is a framework that is developed that links the historic properties to the historic trends that occurred over time. The Sailboat Bend Historic District has significance in its association with early community planning and development, its social history, and its relationship to the founding and development of the city of Fort Lauderdale. Within the original designation of the Sailboat Bend Historic District in 1991, the following trends and patterns were noted: that the structures built prior to 1940 were the most significant to the district, as their numbers have vastly declined, and they represent the city's earliest pioneering families. The second is that if a structure was built in the decades after the period of significance, specifically the 40s and 50s, and had an appearance of the earlier period of significance, it could be considered significant, also known as contributing, and that the district illustrated the evolution of the city beginning from its early 1920s examples through the mid-century modernisms of the 1950s and 60s. The basis of the historic significance in the designated historic district in this updated survey remains the same as originally intended. So to outline the 3 periods of significance that are represented within the survey is the pre-development, which is prior to the 19th century, where there isn't really any physical representations left. The pioneer settlement, which is the period between 1910 and 1944, with the earliest structure that's indicated within the district being constructed in 1910. And that period represents several different architectural styles, including bungalows, frame vernacular, residential structures, masonry vernacular, Mediterranean revival, minimal traditional, and mission revival. And then the post-war era would be from 1945 to 1961. And architectural styles that are represented in this period are minimal traditional, ranch, and mid-century modern. To give you an overall summary of the findings, this is just a quick snapshot, and of what was found within the district. And so you can see on the left is a pie chart, and then there's the actual map showing the contributing and non-contributing properties. As part of the survey, a total of 458 properties were surveyed. Some properties were grouped together in some instances, like the properties within the PUD where there's multiple residences. And within the survey, there were 176 that were identified as contributing and 281 that were identified as non-contributing, and then an additional 51 lots that were either vacant, parking lots, or parks. And then moving on, I will provide you with an overview of the proposed ordinance updates, which address design standards for structures and site design standards. Both of these sections update the existing material and design guidelines of the ordinance and provides a differentiation of materials and processes for contributing and non-contributing properties. These updates also provide an update to our administrative approval process for the review of site elements, as well as updates to what we call the 15-day call-up process that's specific to Sailboat Bend. So to give you a little bit of an overview, just a quick snapshot of some sample requests for a window and door application that's visible from the right-of-way. The columns that are related to contributing are more or less what we follow today as far as what the process is. And then that would be similar to what someone would go through with these proposed ordinance updates. So, and then on the right, you can see the non-contributing process outlined where there's some differentiation between what process that type of property would go through versus what a contributing property would go through. And in some instances, it's the same. So you can see there's in-kind replacements. Those can always be handled at an administrative level. If it's a replacement to match the original where we have photographic evidence, that can always be approved at staff level. And then if it's a totally new design for new construct or for contributing properties, that requires a historic preservation board approval. And if it's something that is a new design, but it matches the architectural style, it could go through a 15-day administrative review process for contributing properties. And then windows and doors that are for non-contributing properties, any of these examples would not go through the Historic Preservation Board for approvals. And then due to our updates from last year where we updated the overall ordinance for historic preservation, anything that's not visible from the right-of-way, staff can review that at staff level. And then roofs are similar to the windows and doors that are visible from the right-of-way and how those are reviewed with the in-kind replacement versus new. There's also listed here solar panels on the roof. Under the proposed updates, any solar panels that are proposed for the roof would go through the 15-day administrative review process rather than coming to the Historic Preservation Board. And here are a few other examples specifically related to new construction and demolition and what that would look like. For the most part, new construction has to go to the Historic Preservation Board for most items, but there are a couple of exceptions, particularly, again, if it's not visible from the right-of-way and it's less than 25% of the overall square footage. But these are just examples, so if there's particulars about some project, it may not fit within this framework, but just to show what the possibilities are. And then for demolition, it's the same. Minor demolition that's not visible from the right-of-way, that could go through an administrative process, but anything that is visible from the right-of-way and is over 25% would need to go to the Historic Preservation Board. And just to give you an overview of kind of what's been going on and the next steps that would have to be taken to adopt this proposal. We sent out a letter to the Sailboat Bend property owners that are within the Sailboat Bend Historic District boundary in late August. And we presented to the Sailboat Bend Civic Association on September 9th, an overview similar to what I'm doing right now. And we also provided in the letter and part of that presentation, a link to the website, which you have all been able to view at this point, and had an open public comment period that ended on October 25th. We did get a number of comments, which were included in the backup material for this item. And that's what we've received to date. And today I sent you an email this morning with an additional letter attached from the Sailboat Bend Civic Association. Moving forward through the public hearing process, this item would have to go to the Historic Preservation Board, which we're thinking potentially in December, maybe January, for the Historic Preservation Board public hearing. Then Planning and Zoning Board would be next. And both the Historic Preservation Board and Planning and Zoning Board act as recommending bodies to the City Commission. And then ultimately it would have to go to the City Commission for their consideration. But these are estimated timeframes, could take longer or be in different dates if necessary. Just to point out on here, there's interactive maps available on the website, which you guys hopefully have seen and browsed, where a property owner can go into the interactive map of contributing and non-contributing properties and find their property on that map. And then the history story map, which provides an overview of the history of the neighborhood. I have more information, which may be more of an interactive discussion as far as what the changes are to the actual ordinance. Just to differentiate quickly, there's the material and design guidelines, which are in our code, and that's specific to Sailboat Bend. And then we have the historic preservation design guidelines, which are more of the pictorial reference and guide for property owners that own a historic property. And to give you an idea, and Jason, as chair, you can tell me what you want to do next, but there's different categories that I've broken into the existing ordinance versus the proposed updates and how they're related to each other. If they're pretty much the same information that's being translated into a different format in the ordinance, or if it's less restrictive or more restrictive, or if it has a basis in the design guidelines.
Trish, what I'd like to do at this point, I'm sorry to cut you off here, but these materials were included in the agenda. I'm going to ask the board members to review them, and what I would propose doing, and Trish, I don't know how much more you wanted to present tonight. What I would propose doing would be to place this on the agenda again under the For the Good of the City for next month's meeting, and we could take a vote on that to specifically address any questions, inquiries, or comments that the board might have on this issue. I know there were a couple of members of the public who also wished to be heard on this. I know that this would not be the appropriate time to do so, but when it does come before the board for actual communication or a vote, that would be the time, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, for public comment on that issue. No, tonight would not be that time. But I think that we could place this again on the agenda for next month to specifically address any questions as to the modifications, updates, amendments that the board may have. What's everybody's thought on that?
I agree.
Okay, Tim?
I agree. I'm just a little confused. When we talk about the modifications, are we talking about all these changes in the ordinances that were previously in line, or are we talking about the Sailboat Bend letter that is asking to be rescinded as a historic district? Is that included in this conversation?
I mean, I think that it's certainly part. I think it's certainly part of the conversation as these modifications specifically address the Sailboat Bend District.
And that's why, I mean, I'm not trying to run the show here, but this is a huge ball of wax, and it's a long discussion. I personally would be more than happy to spend more time, more meeting, whatever it takes to address this thing and really get to the core of it and work on it. I just don't think it's something that we could do as at the end of a typical meeting. I'm just going to put it out there to say that perhaps we need a meeting where there's nothing on the agenda but this discussion, and we have an hour or more to talk about it and try to. And if it takes 2 meetings, we do 2 meetings. But I just don't think it's something that we can breeze through for sure.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Tim. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to push it off to next meeting. I want to make sure that our board really looks at this. I think a lot of times this it's more just for comment and review, whatever. But this is a big one. There's a lot of meat there, and obviously a lot of flavors out in the community as to whether or not they like the meat. And I think that we need to really look at this. And I might be persuaded to call a special meeting just to address this issue. I want to talk to Trish and Shari a little bit about that offline after tonight's meeting to see kind of how that would go forward. But I don't think that's a bad idea either, even if it's just a short hour or 2, but only focusing on this with nothing else. I think that at that point in time we could really just focus in on this. That might be a good idea.
And then, Jason, one other comment would be, as a board member, is any one of us restricted to have this conversation with the city attorney and staff, Trish's team, to come in and say, listen, I'd like a little bit of your time to go line by line on this so that when we all do get together, we have all our ducks in a row the best we can, and some questions we might have already been answered as far as legality and what
This is Shari.
are parameters that we could work in.
This is Shari. Sure, Tim. We'll be glad to meet with you.
Yeah, I think great idea.
Anyone else?
That would be my suggestion. Then anybody who's interested in asking those questions without tying a meeting up, we get some of those answered first, then we have our meeting and try to come to conclusions.
Arthur?
As I through this review was inconsistencies or loopholes in guidelines. And that was what I was, I remember specifically the issue of the picket fence. And I have since paid a lot of attention to fences over in Sailboat Bend.
More so than you ever thought you would, right, Barbara?
And they're about as inconsistent as anything you can imagine. So but we were reviewing why the contractor hadn't followed the guidelines, which were, and there was this thing about preferably, or I can't remember the word now, arguably, something like that. We could have argued about it for hours on whether or not a picket fence was actually required. So it was those kinds of inconsistencies that, I thought was the impetus for the review, so that
that was part of it. That was part of it. And I'm sorry to cut you off because I know that for a long time we've been talking about this contributing versus non-contributing, property issue as well.
I'm new to the board, relatively speaking. So,
Sure.
Okay, sounds good. So I agree that we should have separate meeting on this and that we should give ourselves time to really think about it.
So let's do this at this time, Arthur. I know you want to be heard, so just let me just say this, and then if you still want to come, and of course I'll give you the opportunity. Let's have a vote now on whether or not to play, or let me rephrase it. Let's have a vote now to place this on next month's agenda, and then after tonight's meeting, I will connect with Tricia and Shari and discuss what steps would be necessary, possibly to set a special meeting and notice a special meeting to address and just be informed further on this specific issue. Does that sound like a good course of action?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion to place this on next month's agenda.
I move to place this on next month's agenda.
All right. Is there a second?
I will second.
Great. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
I have a quick item, a question that I didn't get out before the vote.
Sure.
And in the letter from the neighborhood association, it mentioned that there were negative effects of the ordinance of the district designation. I guess before we meet next month, I'd like to know a little bit more in detail what they're referring to. That's all.
Okay. So maybe we can work on, communicating maybe through Tricia to them that we'd like a little bit more clarification. Maybe they could send another communication to us for circulation to the board prior to that meeting.
And maybe we can get it before the day of the meeting.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial. Maybe we can request that they send it to us with enough advance notice that we have a chance to review it. I think it's a good idea. All right, so we have a motion pending. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes unanimously. This item will be replaced on next month's agenda. And then as stated, I'll speak with Tricia and Shari about trying to notice and schedule a special meeting specifically to address and discuss this item. Because I think, Tim, you kind of hit the nail on the head. This is a big one. And, we want to make sure we give it the due time necessary for consideration. All right, so with that, I don't believe we have any other items on our agenda at this time. If there is nothing further, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yay.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you so much, everybody. Meeting will be adjourned at 6:30 p.m. Great seeing everyone.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.